Hello guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this video. This week I'm going to show you basic editing tutorial. So this is going to basically show you what I do whenever I'm editing a photo. If you shoot in JPEG or in RAW, this will help in both scenarios. It's best if you shoot in RAW because this is a full flat image straight from camera without any editing or any processing that the camera has actually done for you. So this is kind of how I would edit a photo, and hopefully this is kind of a tutorial 101 for basic editing if you've never edited or processed an image before. I'm going to start doing these a bit more regular to add to my YouTube playlist, and this is going to incorporate a little bit of Photoshop and Lightroom, the two editing tools that I personally use, which is part of the Adobe Creative Cloud photography suite. I believe it's still about £10 a month for a subscription for a 20 gig online storage, or you can go with the 1 terabyte online storage for £15 a month, which I've just upgraded to today. And the Creative Cloud actually from Adobe allows you to edit and synchronize photos across all your devices. So if you open a device on your PC or a Mac and you make any changes to that image, it will synchronize over to the mobile app on your phone. If you have a tablet, it will synchronize to that, all over the air and seamless. So it's really good to pick up from where you left off. So in this tutorial I'm going to show you basically from start to finish on how I go from this kind of flat image, which is again straight from camera, to something like this. And it's not too difficult, and I'm going to show you in Adobe Lightroom CC. Now some of you may use Adobe Lightroom Classic, which used to be just called Adobe Lightroom. It's pretty much the same. If you've got Classic and CC, they're very similar. The biggest difference is the libraries. If you go into the library section on the left hand side in Adobe Lightroom Creative Cloud, then the albums and everything are a lot different. It's not as well structured excuse me, as the Adobe Classic version, but you can store things up in the cloud, which is a lot more beneficial, especially for me at the moment because I'm on the move quite a lot. Just going to hide that for now. You still have all of the options over on the right hand side to edit and process your images, most of which are the same in Adobe Lightroom Classic as they are in CC. And what I'm going to do is take you through the processing structure. So the first thing I'm going to do is load the image into Adobe Lightroom CC. I'm just going to hide this down here so we get full screen. Now if you're watching this on YouTube on a phone or something, hopefully it's fit to your size screen. I actually have an ultra wide 29-inch 21:9 ratio monitor, which is an ultra wide screen. So it's a little bit longer, it's a little bit wider than a 1080p screen. Which is why you may be finding that you may have bars along the top and the bottom. So apologies for that. It's just the type of screen I've got. So the very first thing I'm going to do when I've got this image is I'll take a look at it and have a look basically and see what I like about it, see what I don't like about it, and pick out the things that immediately jump out and think, okay, I need to change that. Straight away, obviously, because it's a raw file, it's very flat and the camera's not done any processing or compression of any kind. So the very first thing I'm going to do, and my particular process, is to go over to the right hand side, and I'm going to click on this tool over here, which is the main sliders tool, and I'm going to go down to optics. And what I'm going to do is click this button here, enable lens corrections. When I click that, have a look at what the image does. This goes from that to that. What that does is that it picks out the camera that you're using and the lens. So in this case it was the 24-70 2.8L Mark II lens, and the software applies the correct profile, or the Adobe profile. You can also change different profiles, and you can load in profiles if you have a preferred lens profile. The software is pretty good at picking out what lens you've shot with automatically, because it's stored in the metadata. So with that, it gets rid of any distortion, any curvature that the lens potentially has. The next thing I tend to do is the little one above that, remove chromatic aberration. What that does, if I just zoom in here, is chromatic aberration is basically these kind of little highlights or halos that you see all around the edge of the sharpest areas. Not so much around here, but certainly where the sun is coming up over the back of the cliffs here. You can see that it's a little bit kind of pink right along the edge there. If you click the remove chromatic aberration, the software actually gets rid of that, does a really good job about it. So that is what that does. I'll just show you again. That's what it was before, and that's what it is after. It's caused by various different, I believe, gamma rays and things from the sunlight which hit various different objects. That kind of just helps get rid of that. The next thing I'm going to do, and what I tend to do, is I'll close the optics panel and then I'll go up to effects. Now I personally choose the dehaze option here, so I'm just going to push the dehaze up, and what it does is it gets rid of any haze basically. If you've got mist or something in the background, or it kind of looks a bit washed out, which the image does out of RAW usually most of the time, it kind of just gets rid of that washed out look and gives it a bit more of a punch. So you can see now, if I just drag it up to +20, you can see the difference immediately. So I'm going to push it up to about 16. Quite happy with that. Now this is a long exposure shot. As you can see, this is, I believe, over 8 seconds. Let me just bring up the profile, bottom right hand corner. If you click on the eye, you can then see how it was shot. This is the Canon 60 Mark II, 24-70, 2.8. It was a shot at ISO 200, 55mm. This was f13, and this is an exposure of 8 seconds. I was using a graduated filter, I believe, and a 3-stop, or I think it could have been a 6-stop filter as well. Very early in the morning. It's a sunrise down at Cuckmere Haven, and it was taken at 5:25 in the morning. I actually got up on the 24th of August at 3:30 in the morning just to drive down and get this sunrise picture. I saw that the weather was going to be good and clear, and I thought, why not? Let's do it, and really glad I did. So long exposure is nice, smoothed out some of the choppy waves and things here, just to give it a little bit more kind of movement. So that's about the image. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the light panel here, and I'm going to first of all start with the shadows. I want to bring some of this dark area back up so we get a little bit more detail here. So I'm going to bring the shadow up. Now what I'm doing here throughout this entire video is I'm doing global adjustments. Now global adjustments means that anything that I make a change over here is changing everything on the entire image all at one time. If I change things individually, so for instance if I change some of the posts here that are going out to sea, then that is classed as a local adjustment, because I'm only changing, or I'm only making a change or an edit to local areas of that image. This as I say, just for very basic tutorial on how to edit an image, this is going to be just global adjustments, and I'll do local adjustments in another video. So again, I'm going to drag up the shadows a little bit. Now you can see that it's bringing up some of the little bit more light over here. Maybe it's a bit too much, but it's certainly bringing a lot of detail over in the beach here. I want to be careful that I don't bring up too much exposure from the sun rising behind here. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to straighten it. Now I don't know if this horizon is dead straight. It should be, but there's one way to check. If I go up to the right hand side and click the straighten or crop tool, it then, as I roll the mouse over, it gives me the rule of thirds, and I can see, if I look closely, that the third of the way up from there to the horizon is a little tiny bit smaller than this, so that tells me that it's not dead straight. So I could just drag one of the corners. Yeah, I can instantly tell it's not straight, so I can drag one of the corners and just to make it nice and level. There's nothing worse than having a wonky horizon. It's a little bit of an OCD thing of me. Anytime I see a picture and someone's got a wonky horizon, it kind of drives me crazy. I tend to leave my thoughts to myself, but first thing you do is just straighten that horizon up. It makes a world of difference. So now that I've done that, if I press the enter key, that saved that. Now it's a little bit better. The next thing I'll do is I'll look at any areas of the screen or any areas of the image for things like dust spots. Dust spots are things that can be on the lens itself. You can have little marks or dust spots or marks on the lens itself or on the sensor. And to get around this, I can see it's something here. Now that is actually a bird flying past, and I know that because I saw it fly past as I was taking the image. It hovered for a little bit and then it flew past again, which is why it's made this bit of a smudge. That is a dust spot. I'm sorry, that is a bird. Whoops. And those are dust spots. Just look around again. A little bit of a dust spot there, dust spot there. To get around dust spots from entering into the image, you can clean the sensor and clean your camera, and I'll take you through on a little guided tour on how to do that in another video. A little bit of a dead pixel, and there's a few little things here and there. So what I'm going to do to get rid of this is I'm going to go up to the right hand side. I'm going to click this picture of a plaster or a band-aid, and it's called the healing brush, and it's currently on Heal, and you can choose Heal or Clone. Heal, basically, if you was to run your mouse over, it will take a portion of the image nearby and it will push it onto there, so it kind of heals it. It almost clones it out. And I'll give you a little bit of a demonstration. First thing I'm going to do is set my size. I want it just slightly bigger than the actual spots itself, so I'm going to choose that kind of size. I want it to feather quite a bit, so I don't want any harsh edges to the circle. So about 76 to do. I'm going to press the space bar to zoom in, and press and hold the space bar and click to drag around the image. And I'm literally just going to click once, and you see it's pulled an area from here and it's pasted it over the area that I'm trying to get rid of. So one click and it gets rid of these. One there, there's a small one there. My screen is a bit dirty, so that doesn't help. I've got one there, a little one there. You may not be able to see these on your screen depending on what you're watching it on. I can certainly see it on mine. Now there was there's this little thing here as well. It could be a plane or a star or something. If I click, gets rid of that. Little dot here, and kind of a dead pixel or a star or dot there. And I think that is about it. Tiny little one there. If I press the space bar again and click and zoom out, and the next thing I'm going to do is this little cloud here is kind of distracting me. I want to just concentrate on this area of the image. So you lead in from the left hand side and it kind of curves around into the distance there where the lighthouse is. This is kind of a little bit off-putting. It's things like this that I've noticed over time, and as you do more and more photography, you'll find things that may distract you, and it's taken away from the overall element of the image. So I'm actually going to zoom in on that cloud there, and I'm going to draw across that cloud to get rid of that, and this tiny little bit here as well. And there we go. So if I click to zoom out, and I'm happy with the sky so far. Now it looks a little bit dull again, so I'm going to go over to the right hand side, and under light I'm going to choose the blacks. Now the blacks are the black and the dark areas of the image, and I'm going to drag that down ever so slightly. Now as I drag, I'll keep an eye on this thing up at the top right hand corner. This is something called a histogram, and histograms are really, really important whenever you're taking a photo or processing a photo afterwards, because it's these things on the left and the right hand side. These are your spike areas we don't want. Everything on the left hand side are your darks and your shadows, and everything on the right hand side are your whites and your highlights. Everything in the middle is kind of mid-tones, greys, that kind of thing. Anytime you see a spike with an arrow on it, it means that if I roll over it, shadows are clipped. What I mean by clipped is there's some dark areas in the photo that are so dark that they have no detail in whatsoever. So you can do various different things on the sliders to try and bring that detail out. Now what I could do is I could drag up the shadows, and you can see that the spike is getting shorter. Okay, it's still spiking, which means it's still clipping, and I think it's probably referring to this area here and possibly this area here. These are very dark. Obviously they're in shadow because the sun is rising over the back here. There's not much I can do about that. What I could do in another video is I could do a local adjustment and just concentrate on this area to bring out any shadows if I possibly can. But just for this video and this tutorial, I'm going to leave that the way it is and keep that down. Now I don't want those shadows all the way up there. I think it looks too washed out, so I'm actually just going to bring it back a little bit. I'm going to push the contrast up a little bit just to give it a bit of punch, and it looks ever so slightly dark still, so I'm going to adjust the exposure just by half a stop, so 0.45, that'll be fine. I've pushed the exposure up, and it's also obviously exposing for the whole image here. You can see the sunlight is a lot lighter now, so I can then balance that out, bringing the highlights down because it's a highlighted area. You can see how that's affecting when I choose the highlights. I want that cloud over here to be apparent, so I'm bringing that highlights right down on this particular image. And the whites, let's just see what the whites do. Okay, so the whites kind of a little bit too much. It gives it too much darkness to it. I'm actually just gonna leave the whites at +10 because I think I quite like that. Okay, so it's not clipping on the right hand side, which is good. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to close that panel and going to go down to colour. Now colour is where you can change the temperature, so you can make the image a bit cooler or warmer by sliding it left and right, and you can see you can be quite dramatic. One thing to note is anything that you do on these sliders makes a massive difference if you go a little bit crazy. So always take these sliders with a pinch of salt. Just experiment, don't go crazy with them. You can actually ruin an image if you just go a little bit mad. So always just move sliders ever so slightly until you're happy. You can always reset each slider. So for instance, if I went to highlights and I double click on the actual circle itself, it puts it back into the middle. So so you don't have to kind of drag it. You can just double click quickly and it goes back. Let's push that back again. Yeah, sorry. So colour, you can change the temperature. Let's warm it up just a little bit. Just a tad. Okay, I'm happy with that. Tint is quite harsh, to be honest. You can really make some difference. I don't want to tint it really because it makes it almost unrealistic. And again, if you go the other way, it can make some really weird kind of psychedelic colours. But you get the idea. Vibrance, I do want to push the vibrance a little bit because I want to enhance this sunrise colour a bit more. And I'm using the vibrance slider on this instead of the saturation because I prefer the vibrance. I believe the saturation just gives it too much of a raw kick, and it's a little bit too harsh, whereas the vibrance just does it ever so slightly differently. In comparison, that's +30 on the vibrance. If I did the same +30 on saturation, it's a lot harsher, and it kind of just stands out. I don't really like that. It kind of dominates that part of the image there. So I'm going to push the vibrance up a little bit, about 30. Moving on to the effects panel. Effects is quite cool again. Texture and clarity do very similar things. The texture is kind of a new thing for Lightroom and Photoshop. It allows you to put a little bit more texture into things like cliffs and jagged edges and things like that, or texture in kind of the stones and things at the bottom here. You don't really want texture on smooth areas of images because I'll show you what it does. If I push the texture up, it brings a little bit more raw grit to the cliffs here, but then it gives it kind of a grainy, kind of noisy feel to all the areas that you want nice and smooth. So I don't like that. Not on this particular image anyway. It works on some, but not all. Dehaze, we've already done a little bit of dehaze. Vignette is basically in the corners of the image. If you use to slide the vignette one way, the corners will go a bit brighter. It almost reminds you of an old wedding photo album, kind of from the 80s or 90s. Don't like that at all. If I slide it the other way, it makes it a bit darker. Now this, actually, the vignette can be quite a nice effect. Some cameras will do a natural vignette depending on the lens and the camera combination that you're shooting with. But sometimes a vignette is quite handy to put in if you want the viewer to draw their attention into the center of the image. So if you've got something here, for instance, I've got a lighthouse here, which is quite nice, and obviously the sunrise behind these cliffs here. Now if I bring the vignette just down a touch, just a little bit, it kind of draws you more into the center of the image instead of your eyes wandering around the edges. So it's a little tip that you can use. Again, don't go crazy. Where's the last one? The last one was grain. Grain is basically noise and grit. If you're looking for something kind of a bit grungy or black and white sort of street photography, you could use a bit of grain to give it a bit of a bite to it, basically. For this image I'm going to leave the grain alone. Detail, sharpening can be quite useful. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to show you the edges of the cliff here. If I just sharpen up just a touch, you can see that the edges are a lot sharper now. They're a lot more poignant, and some of these details can get really dramatic. The only downside is that you can end up sharpening the wrong areas of the image if you're doing global adjustments like I am. So you don't really want to sharpen waves or sharpen sky, because it makes no sense. Sky and sea and things, water, it tends to be smooth and flowing. So just think about those kind of things when you're editing your image. I'll sharpen up just a touch, but not crazy. Noise reduction gets rid of anything that you can see in the smooth areas of the image, and also on other areas where anywhere you see noise or grit or grain, the noise reduction element helps get rid of that. To give an example, if I go up to the top right corner here, and I slide the noise reduction right up, you can see that the noise is pretty much gone now. It's nice and smooth, and you think, yeah, that's great, that looks really, really nice. If you go a bit crazy, then you start to see these lines start appearing anytime there's a gradient. These lines are what's called banding, and banding can be introduced if you use too much noise reduction. To get rid of banding, you actually have to introduce more noise again. So you kind of have to play this balancing act between the two. So in smooth areas and soft areas, noise reduction is really good. The downside is when you go back into the details, you've now lost all that kind of sharpness on anything with the texture, and it starts to look almost like a painting. You look at the stones here as well. It's a cool effect if that's what you're going for, but it's not really what you want, and you lose all that texture. So we're going to drag that right back down again, bring that detail back into the cliffs, and I'm just going to push it just a touch, so to get a nice kind of even balance. Moving down to optics, we've done the optics. We don't really want to change anything else, because we will end up distorting it. And geometry is not something I use often. This is quite good if you're using a very wide angle lens and you get some really strange artifacts in the image. For instance, the edges of a building may look like they're skewed if you're taking it straight up with a wide angle lens. Geometry can help fix those lines for you. For now, that will be it. It's turned into almost like a half-hour video, this. But this is basic processing. To give you an idea, if I do a before and then after, so straight away you can see there's a bit more of a punch. Before, raw image straight out of camera, and within 20 minutes or so, a little bit of very basic editing, you can get your photos looking like the way you want them to look. Just bear in mind, anytime you edit or process an image, you are the artist and it's what you want the image to look like. It doesn't matter about anyone else or what anyone else really thinks. It's all about you and how you perceive the image that you've seen in front of you. Everyone has their own outlook on things, and if you was to give 5 artists a paintbrush and put them in front of a field and ask them to paint, every single painting will be slightly different, because every artist has their own unique way of putting their spin on things. So there is no right and wrong in processing and editing photos or photography. There are guides and helpful tips and tutorials to guide you through and point you in things that you shouldn't do, but take everything with a pinch of salt, because everything is down to your imagination. That's it for now. This will go into the YouTube playlist for small tutorials for basic editing, and I've been using Photoshop and Lightroom for about 20 years now, certainly Photoshop, and I'm very comfortable with it. So I'm going to be starting to do a little YouTube series on various different Photoshop techniques and how you can get various different things out of your images or put them in, all sorts of things. So look out for those, and I will see you again next time. Don't forget to follow me on my Facebook page and Instagram, and if you like these videos, I'll be continuing to do them every week or every 2 weeks, usually Sunday, so keep an eye out for them. Subscribe and press the little bell icon to be notified whenever I upload a video. Till next time, see you again. Bye bye.